Welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, everyone. I thought I would make a video today to talk about something that I suspect happens more often than you might realize, which is that you have a vintage sewing machine and either you are trying to use it for the first time, or you've heard it has a problem, or maybe it's been running great, you've been using it, but your thread ran out and you had to rethread the machine, and you did so, but for whatever reason, something's not quite right. You have to remember with vintage sewing machines, one of the things that gives them their longevity is that they are mechanical. In this case, this is not a treadle machine, so it's not just mechanical, it's electromechanical. It runs on electricity. But even though there's no software causing an issue, you can still have issues with these machines. And the good news is, if your machine has been running well, you've kept it oiled, you keep the lint clean, and it's not been sitting for a long time, and all of a sudden, you know how the machine runs. In fact, this can actually happen to you even if you know the machine well and you are a incredibly experienced sewers, as are many of the clients who get machines from me. Not all of them, some of them are new. And I wanted to show you how easy it is to make just one error that can cause your machine to have problems. And the first thing many of us think of, oh gosh, what if is something on the machine broken? Does the machine need repair? Well, many times, especially with the machine you've been working with, it's unusual for a vintage sewing machine to just randomly mechanically fail. Of course it can happen, but it's not common. But I'm going to show you something that is. So I'm going to zoom in the camera, I'm going to zoom the lens here, and I want you to look at something. I'm going to have you look at the thread path. Now I've got a sort of a deep crimson colored thread here, and it should be easy to see, right? It comes around and then it comes down, and it appears to be threaded just fine. So let's go up, and I'm going to see if any of you can spot what's going on with this machine. There are other things that went on with this machine. This machine was brought to me by one of my repeat customers. So anyway, let's take a look. We've got the thread here. Let's get a little zoom, might be a little easier to see. I know we're looking at thread here, but if you watch, you will see, I'm going to hold my scissors here and you'll see the bright red thread here. It comes around, the first thread guide hits there, comes here, comes down, as many sewing machines do. It comes down, and as I've told you, I'll think about making the letter J. It comes around clockwise, and it comes around and it goes to this section here. The thread slides to the left, and as it comes around, it actually, this metal is polished from the factory, very smooth. The thread came around and it rests here. It comes over the check spring, which has to happen, and then the thread comes back up. And where does it go up to? It goes up to the take-up arm, which is sitting right here at the moment. And then it will come further down to another thread guide, and we hit a thread guide here. There's one down here. You can go to the left or the right of the needle because this machine is set up for a double stitching capability, but I've chosen, again, the threading here, was chosen on the left side, and then the thread goes from the front to the back because Kenmore's from this period thread front to back, which is a nice thing. So, looks pretty normal, doesn't it? Did any of you happen to notice, and this may not be easy to see, so I'm going to zoom in even more with a focus in a certain area right here, and we have to zoom even more. This may not have shown up for you, so if you didn't catch it, it's because, how much more zoom can I give here? Let's take a look. How about that? Look where the take-up arm is, everyone. If you look at the take-up arm, you will see something that you should not be seeing, and it's one thing. When you have a spool of thread, this can happen with new thread, with old thread. Thread is essentially a micro-sized yarn, if you've ever seen thick yarns that people use for knitting, for example. Thread is basically fibers that are twisted together to form a yarn. They're just, in the case of sewing thread, it just happens to be really thin. So think yarn on a really small scale. Now, as I was showing you, as this is that front thread guide on the top, and then of course the thread is moving down right below here, which you cannot see, of course, is the tension assembly. But as the thread comes back up, once it hits the thread guide just above the tension assembly, trying to get a happy medium where there we go. I know it looks like we're floating in water here. Sorry about that. Okay, so it came up here just like it's supposed to, but look up here. Look up at the take-up arm. Something's amiss. If I take my little thing there, look at that. Why am I doing that? Because the thread got crossed over, okay? The signals were crossed with the thread because the person who was threading it was doing so, and because the person knows how to thread Kenmores pretty easily and does it normally very quickly, was somewhat distracted and did not notice that the thread had simply curled around itself. Because thread has a lot of twist, it will sometimes coil. You know, the way a little garden snake will coil around your finger. That's what thread can do, and that's all it takes. And by the way, the person who threaded this was me, so I'm not blaming it on anyone else. My point is, even if you know your machine really well and you know how to thread it, it can happen. So if it happens to you, it's an easy fix. In fact, you don't have to rethread the entire machine, but we're going to do that just for good measure. But I'm going to cut the thread right here where it goes up into the take-up arm, pardon me. I'm just going to cut that right there. And it's still threaded through the take-up arm hole barely. I'm going to pull it now. Now, if I, one thing I want to do is go ahead and get rid of the lower piece that that I have down here below that's going through the needle. I'll just pull it straight out. Remember, always, whenever you need to remove thread from a machine for whatever reason, you have a thread break, or you're going to change threads because you need a different color or what have you, make sure that when you remove thread, okay, if it's above the tension assembly, in most machines, you can simply, and I'll show you in a minute when I cut it, you can pull it backwards. However, once you are removing thread that is already through the tension assembly, always pull that remnant forward, okay? Because the tension assembly has a spring in it, and that spring is designed to go, it's like a one-way street, and you don't want to go in the opposite direction. Now, some of you people have done it. I'm not saying that this system is so fragile, right? And Kenmore tension assemblies are some of the best ever made, in my opinion, just my opinion. They're tough. They're usually not fussy if you simply don't try to get customized with them. You just use them as they were intended to be used. However, going backwards in a tension assembly especially can cause problems, and you don't need those problems, and there's no reason to. So right now I have pulled the thread down, and so now I've gotten rid of that sort of overlapping. Remember, the thread was just crossed. It was just crossed once. But remember, your machine's performance and the way it stitches, think of it like that. You can see where I've crossed the threads here, I believe. So again, it's easy to do. And the thread was probably curling and I wasn't paying attention. That same issue I think I've highlighted before in another video. It can happen especially around your needle. You'll be trying to thread the needle, and while you're threading the eye of the needle, the thread is got a mind of its own and it wiggles around and you're not noticing it. So you get the needle threaded, but what you don't know is your thread is coiled. It's either coiled around the needle shaft, which is very common, or sometimes you've got it in the thread guide. This thread guide is I'm pointing to the one on the left. It has two, and maybe you've got it hooked on there, but not properly. So the good news is your machine is not broken. It's just that the person who threaded it, and again, I did this, and so if I can do it, it happens all the time. If you're an experienced sewer, it happens. If you're not, it happens. So you haven't really broken your machine at all. The machine will sit there. Remember, it doesn't have a brain. It's not going to beep at you or flash fancy lights and say, hey, look at the LED. Here, I'm going to give you a code and it's going to tell you what's wrong. You don't need a code. You just need a solid mind and patience to notice. So I've just shown you how to fix that, and that took nothing. I didn't have to rethread the machine. So now what do we need to do? I'm going to show you essentially, okay, how do we avoid this? When you thread your machine, you need to actually, even when you've done it so many times, I have been threading Kenmores for 12 years plus now. So I know how to thread Kenmores, even different models, just because I've done it so many times. And those of you who own a Kenmore or you may have no problem with them either. But even if you've got a lot of experience doing it like me, it can happen. And I thought this is a perfect video to show all of you. So there you go. That is how to quickly troubleshoot a problem. It will often show up in the tension of your stitches, because remember, a sewing machine, that tension that has control of your thread, as your thread moves, the tension is managed or controlled, and it is controlled in a certain way. The engineers designed it to work a certain way, with the thread having a path or a thread path in a certain direction. And so, think of it like a bus that has multiple stops, right? If you change any of it, even just crossing the thread, means you've altered the tension along its path. And when you do that, then the machine will speak to you. It may not flash a code, but it will give you stitches that look a little off, maybe, or you might get away with it for a while, but eventually it will show itself. So that's just, again, another troubleshooting video to say, hey, sometimes it's something that simple. Not always. But what I love about machines from this era, from what I call the heirloom era, is that once you take time to get to know your machine, you don't need an app for this. You do not. You learn the machine. And once you learn its ways, it's like, you've been driving a car for years and you know all of its ins and outs. You know exactly. Every machine has its own little idiosyncrasies, just like people do. And once you know that, then you're fine. But even when you know a machine, you have to remember it could be something simple. So there are times when machines have problems. This machine had a problem. I'll be speaking about in its debut video soon. This is a machine brought to me to overhaul. But many times, more often than not, the issue with your vintage sewing machine is not the machine. It is something that the sewist, the operator, did. And I'll be the first to say, I've done it many times. So don't feel bad if you did it. It happens to the best of us. But it's not a bad thing because it's easily fixed. Your machine's not broken. Now we're going to rectify the threading of the machine, and we'll be on our way. So if this was you and you fixed that one little thing, you don't have to rethread the whole machine. You'll simply go down. You'll get your the last two thread guides, and then you simply go, and of course on this particular Kenmore, you're going to thread the needle front to back, and you're off to the races. Okay. So, and in fact, in this case, my bobbin thread, my thread tail on the bobbin is still there. I didn't need to remove it. Right. That's that white thread you see me moving there. You can see it wanting to coil a little bit, but that's fine. You don't have to remove your bobbin thread when you're fixing something like this. Now, and I've shown many videos how to, when you're threading a machine, how are you going to, get your bobbin thread to come up. But in this case, we don't need to. So I hope this was helpful. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to thread a Kenmore 158.17572. And hopefully that will be useful for those of you who maybe you do have the manual. If you don't, you can get manuals for these Kenmores fairly easily. But even if you do, sometimes the pictures in the manual and the instructions, they're helpful. I find them helpful when I was first learning machines, but hopefully watching a video is a little more straightforward. So we will do that in the next video. That was because many of my viewers said, hey, could you please remember to thread the machines even if you know how? Maybe we don't. We'd like to see it. So again, just another example of my viewers giving me suggestions that help improve this channel. So if you have found this video useful or anything on this channel useful, please consider donating to the channel, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee and donate at whatever level you wish. It helps support my efforts here, and it helps me fund the purchase of more machines so we can continue to make video material for those of you who come to this channel looking for ideas, or maybe you just love listening to somebody ramble on about sewing machines. Some of you do because, well, as you know, some of these videos can become very extended. This is not one of them, however. I appreciate all of you watching, and we will see you in the next video.